Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, working on the free T again. So now that I got the floors, the dash, the firewall all built, everything's clecoed in, it's starting to look like a car inside as well, which is pretty cool. So next thing I need to do, and I hinted at it at one of the videos, I think when we were doing the floors, I want to keep the tunnel as tight and small as possible around the transmission and the torque tube. So what we're going to work on today is getting the drive shaft tunnel and the transmission part done as well. So it's going to take a few different pieces to get everything to kind of flow and blend together. So we're going to start by working on the rear half first. I have a piece laid out here. We're going to go over the pipe anvil and make this piece, and then we can start kind of connecting the dots. So let's get started. Alright, so what we're going to be using today to make this portion of the rear section of the drive shaft or torque tube tunnel is we're going to be using this pipe anvil. So this is a tool that has been around for a long time. It's a homemade tool. It's something that Gene Winfield, if you've ever taken one of his classes, he's always talking about. Pipe anvil is something that he made and uses in his shop quite often. One of the times when he and I did a class at Eastwood, we decided to make one of these pipe anvils to show the class how to make one, and I also needed one for my shop, so it was a little bonus for me too. So I don't use this tool a lot. I sometimes use the English wheel with the rubber top wheel to do some of the same type of stuff, but this tool is a lot quicker when you're trying to make things like a transmission tunnel. You can make it a lot quicker if you lay out your lines. So the way this works is there's 3 different size pipes on here, and there's a gap in between. It's about a 16th gap in between, or I'm sorry, 3/32nd gap in between. And what that lets you do is you can slip the sheet metal in between the pipes, and you can bend them around to create a bend, a nice smooth bend. So you can just go around and you can move the piece a little at a time, and you can actually create a cone shape or a curve in a panel. And all this is form. It's not stretching, you're just forming the metal, but you can make a nice curvature in a panel really easy. And all you're doing is just using the different pieces of pipe to give you the different diameters that you want for your radius. So what we do when we make a transmission tunnel or something where we need it to be a cone, you're going to actually put the piece in at an angle. So you would draw your cone on the panel here. And so if we have a center line like this, the marker's going crappy here, like that, and then we would have our lines go out like that, here, and here, and we go out like that. So when we put it in the pipe anvil, we're going to put it in at an angle and keep going along those angles, and that will give you that cone shape when you're done. So it's just the way that you cut the panel and the way that you actually put it into the pipe anvil will give you that shape, or that funnel or cone shape that you're looking for when you're building a drive shaft tunnel or something like that. So I got my piece laid out, and I'm going to put it in here, do the bending, and we should be able to have something whipped up for the rear half real quickly. Alright, so what you saw me doing there, I was stretching the edge with the hammer on the wood block. So instead of using a sandbag, which gives a lot more, I was using a wood block as I was hammering on it. What that does is that's stretching this whole edge here, because we want to start having this top edge to start to roll out, to bell out, kind of like the transmission does, the bell housing on the transmission, or bell housing on the engine, and the front of the transmission, how it kind of goes out. So we want to start that process, so when we start welding all our pieces together, they will blend nicely and we don't have like a sharp edge. So by doing that, stretching it, I added extra material, and then what I can do is put it in the wheel here. I can planish those hammer marks, and I can also start to pull out on the piece to give a little bit of a flare to the panel as we're doing this. So I can roll the panel and I can roll it up, and it's going to give just a little bit of that flare that we want out with the panel. I got pretty good pressure because I'm trying to planish at the same time. So what we can do is loosen this a little bit, and we can kind of roll with the wheel to do that. So this is going to give us, it's hard to see in the camera now, but we're starting to get the panel to go straight, and then it starts to flare out like that. So that's what we want to do. I'm going to work the panel in the wheel and kind of pull up on it as I do that, and that's going to help give us this flare that we want on the top of the panel as we're going. So I'm going to keep doing that, and we should be able to get a little bit of a flare going to it, and then we can start making the next panel to blend the two of them together, and we can do that on both sides, and that will blend everything together. But this one's going to take a little bit of work. I have to kind of fold it back by hand to give her shape, but we're getting there, and we'll keep working in the wheel and hammering in the block, and eventually we'll get this to have a nice shape to it. Alright guys, so I got the rear section tacked to the middle section, I guess you could call it. And I can work on this front section here. Now, I won't lie to you, I made this front piece here, and I thought I kind of knew what I needed to do, but as I started making it, I actually realized after I tacked it in place that I made it wrong. The shape just didn't fit. And what actually caused that was me flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't really make a pattern. I just rough cut something and thought I could shape it and get it to hit pretty good, but because I didn't do the paper pattern, it didn't really tell me what needed to happen. The paper pattern usually will tell you basically what needs to happen, whether it bunches up and you need to slit it and overlap it, or you need to slit it and you need to let it spread out to fit. It'll kind of tell you what needs to happen, and what I thought needed to happen did not. And I'm okay at this stuff, but I'm by no means a master at this. So plenty of times I'll think it's supposed to do one thing, you get into it and realize instead of stretching, you're supposed to shrink on this piece. So what I'm finding is the top of this crown of the transmission here has a bit of shape both front to back and also of course side to side. What needs to happen, and I demonstrated it by my paper pattern that I've cut down now, is that where there's two little tape areas here, I slit the paper and it overlapped itself, and by doing that it got rid of the bunching and made everything kind of fit up a little better. So I was stretching it before and the thing just would not fit right, and I was kind of tweaking this piece to make it fit this, and then when I fit it to the car it just was out of whack, didn't look right, and that's why we're here. And I cut the metal out and threw it on the ground, and I'll look at it the rest of this project and remind myself that I effed up. So that's just a little thing that I'd like to throw in along the way here. I'm not perfect, and I mess up plenty of times and waste metal. Don't be afraid to cut something apart and redo it so that it looks the best you possibly can every time you do a project. So I'm going to cut this blank out to this piece that I have here. You can see that with the tape still in place, it kind of is holding its shape. I mean, now this is kind of some crappy template paper I have here, chipboard, but it's actually holding its shape a little bit to what I need. So I'm going to untape this, lay it out on the metal, cut a piece about this size. and then I can start working the metal. What I think actually needs to happen, it needs some stretching in the back section here, and then where it comes in to meet this, it needs to actually be shrunk along these edges to bring it in and get it to fit there. So I'm going to cut this out, try it again, and hopefully we'll have something that fits the second time around. Alright, so I got all the major pieces of the tunnel made, and I got everything tacked together now, and it's starting to look pretty good. It's all kind of roughed in. I'm going to have to do a lot of work on the English wheel and planishing by hand to get all the shape matching up pretty well, but it fits the car pretty good. I trimmed a little bit here and there, and we're just about to the point where I can start making all the flanges for all the edges so that it all attaches nicely to the firewall and floors that I made previously. Now, the one thing I need to do that I mentioned a couple of times about this car is we're fighting foot room. We really need to try and get as much foot room or space for foot room as we can out of this project, especially on the driver's side where I'm trying to fit a throttle in there. So, what I need to do is actually suck in the sides of the tunnel on both sides here and here on the driver's side. And I just roughly drew in some marks where that needs to be. So what I need to do is I need this tunnel to come in and then actually keep diving in here till we get back to where the transmission mount is, where the ears for that is. It can actually start coming out again, and this will match the shape of the bead or the step that I designed into the floorboards. So I'm going to try and sort of match that, but we need to suck this in right here. Mainly on the driver's side, because this is where my foot's going to be, and our heel is going to be right in there for the throttle. So we really need to, at least at the very minimum, get some heel space in there so that we can get the heel of our shoe in there or our boot in there, so we can work the throttle and we don't have to put it up on the firewall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to block this out in the sandbag here, because I want to move this in pretty good. So I'm going to use the sandbag to speed up the process. I'm going to hammer it in, just like you saw me do in this top section. Hammer it in instead of out, so that'll give us that indent, and then I can put it in the wheel and smooth it out, planish it out in the wheel, and we can test fit it a couple times and hopefully have something that fits pretty snug on the transmission in the center, and we'll be another step closer. Alright, so we got this piece fed up here. We're going to make the flange for the top of the trans tunnel. and I'm going to use the firewall as a guide as I use the stretcher to stretch this piece around. So we have our flange, which is going to lay over top of the firewall, and then I have this extra material here that will overlap onto the trans tunnel, and then we'll scribe and cut everything. But what I need to do is work and stretch around this to get it to match this opening in the firewall, and then we'll blend everything together and hopefully have it cleat-coat in place here soon. Alright, so let's check out this tunnel. I got all the pieces welded together now and kind of hammered and dollied and sanded and ran it through the wheel and the planishing hammer a little bit just to kind of get all the shapes blended together, and it's looking pretty good. I got that front flange there welded on. I have it cleat-coated to the firewall, so we now have this full one-piece tunnel locked in place, which is the big part. It was kind of hard wrestling all these different pieces together, and I really need to get everything welded so that I could kind of make all my flanges. Some guys are able to do this in one piece, which is pretty incredible to me, but I am a little better and quicker at making it out of multiple pieces and then welding everything together. So what we need to do is in here, you can see we got these areas that are exposed and open, so I need to make some kind of like bubbles or whatever you want to call it in there to kind of go around some of these sections. I have in here where the transmission mount is, and of course then we have all these bottom flanges here where there's gaps. I need to fill in all those gaps. So what I could do now is bend some edges up, some 90-degree pieces, and we can use the shrinker stretcher to, this in here is pretty flat. Then around this section here, we want this to follow that. These on both sides indents in, so I need to kind of shrink that in to follow the curve. And we're going to make all these flanges to go around and make everything look nice and finished, as well as fill in these areas that I kind of rough cut as I was building it, just to try and get clearance so I could just keep moving forward, knowing that I was going to make pieces and make everything look more finished as I got closer to the end. So been a long process, but we're kind of on the home stretch here, just making all these little detailed pieces, and we should have a complete tunnel with a little bit more detail work. So I'm going to get started on making all these flanges for the bottom next. Alright guys, so we got the driver's side pieces all shaped in the shrinker stretcher and the hammer and everything else. Took a lot of work to get all those little pieces made and get everything welded in and flowing, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's turning out pretty nice. So now we need to do the passenger side, which is basically the same kind of work, but I figured I'd show you a little tech tip with what I do when I'm making these flanges to help me kind of transfer the shape without having to go from shrinker stretcher to the car 100 times. I can get it really close first try by having a little template. So I take a piece of metal, it's the same gauge as what I'm working with, I bend it by hand with no flanges in it, and that's basically the shape that I'm trying to accomplish with this larger piece here with the flange on it. So I've already bent one section here, and it is fitting pretty good here with the my template. And now what I can do is I can mark where the next bend is down a little further. I can mark that, and I can start stretching that area to bring it around, and then do the same. I can flip this over because it is symmetrical and go from this side and do the same over there. And that will get me really, really close, and all I have to do is just go in the car and just touch it here and there with the shrinker stretcher to get it to fit exactly how I want, and we're moving pretty quickly. So that's a quick little tip for making these flanges if you're trying to get it to follow some curvatures in the floor or in the transmission or around the bell housing. You can do this, make a little template, and then you can shrink and stretch to match it. So I'm going to keep working on this, and I should be able to get these pieces all made, welded in, and hopefully we'll be finished up with this project here real soon. Wow, that was a big project. When I started on doing this tunnel, I had the idea of making it fit really tight around the transmission and kind of have all the little bulges or blisters that came out and went around the transmission. And in the bell housing and different things like that, to follow it really closely, and it really tested my skills and my problem solving to make all these little pieces. And I can't even count how many pieces this is made out of, just because it's so intricate, especially we got up towards the front. and around the transmission mounts, it just got really crazy. And you know, once you start a project like this, you got to see it through. I think this was the best way to do it. Otherwise, just running no tunnel at all would have been the alternative. But I wanted to make something that looked pretty cool, looked a little more finished, and had you know, just a cool look to it. So I want it to be, you know, we want the free T to definitely be unique, and you know it's this car when you see it. So some things like this tunnel and the firewall and stuff like that sets it apart. It's a ton of work. Took a lot of time. I probably have 2 weeks or more into building this on and off, evenings, weekend days, etc., etc. But I have a lot of time into this tunnel. You couldn't pay somebody to do this, and it wouldn't make sense. But if you're challenging yourself like I am, this was a good project, and it was pretty cool. So I haven't finished out. I didn't 100% metal finish the tunnel. I took it to, let's say, 80%, because I think it's more than acceptable for what this car needs. And I'm planning on spraying the floor and the tunnel and the inside of the car with an Eastwood spray-on sound deadening and heat barrier that Eastwood offers. So this is something you could spray out of a gun. It's sort of got a textured finish to it that looks pretty cool, and you can paint it on top of that as well. So I think I'm going to do something like that. That's going to fill some of the imperfections, and honestly, I'm not trying to go real crazy on this car. I've already went way further on this car than I planned, like everything I do, and it's gotten just a little bit out of control. So that's the tunnel. The floors are done. The firewall is done. The dash is done. Wow, it's coming along, and pretty much most of the interior sheet metal is done, and a lot of the structural, pretty much, I guess, at this point, all the structural sheet metal is pretty much done. Now we're on to just detail work, fixing little spots inside of the cowl that are still rusty that I need to fix, making some side panels where it blends from the turtle deck into the body, fixing a little bit of rust in the back of the body. But that's all just superficial stuff that we can do while the engine's away getting rebuilt. My big thing right now is I wanted to get the tunnel built with the engine and trans in place so that I can send this off, and I don't have to worry about needing the engine and trans or digging another one out and mocking it up, etc., etc. So now we got it all together. Everything's great. I think it looks awesome. It looks really kick-ass, and it looks, you know, pretty crazy. The next thing's going to be figuring out how to get a little spoon pedal in there for the throttle, but I think we can make it work. I got some ideas for lengthening a spoon pedal, and I'll start spitballing some of those ideas. So that's all I have for this video. I appreciate you guys following along all these. As always, we do videos on Tuesdays on the free T. Fridays we do the Sweetheart Roadster. I have something going on it. I've slowed down a little bit on that because I've been trying to kick butt on this one. And then we throw stuff in between of picking, swap meets, who knows what else we're throwing in between. So if you guys like it, please give it a share. Pass it on to a buddy if you think it's helpful. I really appreciate everybody that's watched, commented, and giving feedback, both positive and negative. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.